Okay, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so I've opened up my project in Photopea. I've already started coloring it. You can see that I have layer 1 right over here. I have the background right underneath it. And I've switched layer 1 to multiply. Some of you have missed this step. Again, for the layer that you're coloring, and you can see that layer right over here because I've made all my stuff green. You see a tiny little thumbnail of it. If I click that eyeball, it makes it disappear for a second. But that layer 1 is clicked on. It's the one I've selected. It says multiply up over here. All right. When I click on the background, it just says normal. And on the background, I have put a little lock on it. That lock's right there. I don't want to color anything on the background. That's a very important part of this. All our coloring is going to be on independent layers. All right. So I've started to work on this one. Now, one of the first things I'm going to show you today is I want you to rename your layer. Okay. So I'm going to actually take my mouse and bring it right over the word layer 1 and then just lightly double click. When I do that, you'll see it's highlighted and now I can rename it. In this case, I'm going to, for me, I'm going to call it my scrubs because the scrubs are the clothes I wear every day and they're matching, so I'm doing everything on that. You can rename your layer pants, you can rename it gloves, you can rename it jacket or shirt, skin or hair, whatever you want, but you should give that layer a specific name. And that layer should really just be one color, all right? And once I'm done naming it, I can just click off of it and you'll see the name stays. Now, as I was working over here, again, I have my green color in my paint bucket, my paint chooser. I have my paintbrush. Again, if you can't find your brush tool, you can always just press the letter B and that will select the brush tool automatically. You can see my tiny brush here. I might want to make it a little bit larger. Right up over here where you see this little downward facing arrow, a dot and a number. In this case, my number is 19. That's just how large the brush is. So once I click that drop down menu, you can see I can adjust the size of the brush. So it's a little bit larger. Now, what we're going to do is you see that there are a lot of little spots that I missed. So I'm going to adjust myself to a smaller brush so I can kind of get in there and get those little tiny little marks that I missed. I'm not going to go that small with the brush, but really so I can get into those corners. I want you to touch up your own work as you're going. So if you should happen to have any like places like over here, you can see as I zoom in that I sort of missed, I'm going to take my little paintbrush and I'm going to kind of fill those in and touch those up. All right. Not just with the touching up of like little spots. I also want to consider that if I have areas that I may have like messed up or kind of added too much to, all right, let's just say I go out of the marks over here, or that I kind of colored a little bit too much over there. I also want to be able to clean these things up. Now, yesterday I showed you there was an eraser tool. It's on the left-hand side over here. It's just 2 spots below your brush tool. It kind of looks like a little eraser. If you mouse over it, it'll say eraser tool. And if you can't find it, you can always just press the letter E, all by itself, letter E, and that will come up. This too is a brush that you can adjust the size of. Okay, and again, for all our brush adjustments, you see size. Your hardness at this point should always be at 100%. Okay, I will show you what different brush hardnesses and softnesses do, but for right now, whatever you're doing, we should be working with 100%. I don't want to give you too many options to start with. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in with my eraser tool. I'm cleaning up my edges. I'm using my brush tool. I'm also filling in areas that I might have missed. All right, and I want to make sure I do a full touch-up of my project before I go on to the next thing. Now, there's always opportunities to touch things up later on, but I'd like you guys to make sure before we move into a new part that the first part looks pretty good. So you can see that I'm switching from my brush to my eraser, and I'm really just going around zoomed in and just fixing things up. So first things first, for anybody who has gotten this far or is not having any problems doing this, this is what I want you to do first, is to sort of clean up your project and take care of any of the missing spots. You see over here, I did not finish. I'm going to take my paintbrush. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to go through. I'm going to color that in really quick. I'm actually being a little sloppy. And I'm going outside the lines, which is okay because I'm going to use my eraser to come back and sort of refine all that to make sure it looks exactly the way I want it. All right, now there's an important part, and this is for all of you who are following me so far and you guys are up to date and you get it and you've been able to use the options. Once you're this far, now you can really start going in and coloring everything. But I don't want you to color everything on one layer. Why? Because we want to be able to change colors later on and be able to adjust this. Let's say 2 weeks from now, I'm wearing different scrubs and I want to adjust the color of the scrubs. I want to have that on its own layer. So at this point now, I want to color my gloves. To color my gloves, I'm going to go to my layer window right over here. It says say layers on the right-hand side. And I am going to go down to the new layer button. That new layer button is all the way at the bottom. It's next to something that looks like a garbage can. That garbage can is delete layer. The one next to it is new layer. It looks like a rectangle with a small little triangle in the corner. When I click that, you see now I have another layer. I've created a new layer here. I have my background, my scrubs, and now layer 1. This layer 1, I've decided, this new layer that I've created, I'm going to double click on it. I want to rename this one gloves because I'm going to now paint my gloves. And I want to put the gloves on a separate layer. Before I start painting the gloves, I can switch this over from normal to multiply. Every layer that I create that is going to be painted on should be on multiply. Your background should not be on multiply because we're not painting on the background. So I've set up a brand new layer here for gloves. I'm going to go click on my color picker. I'm going to pick a color I like for the gloves. Okay, hit OK. Whatever's in that top box is there. And then I'm going to come in and start painting my gloves. Let me just zoom in a little bit so we can see. Oops. Switch to my paintbrush. Just trying to paint with the eraser and nothing was happening. All right, so I'm going to go in, I'm going to paint my gloves. Again, you see I'm kind of creeping outside the edges, which is okay because I know how to use the eraser tool to fix it. All right, I'm going to grab my eraser tool and now I'm going to just touch up my edges and make sure that it looks just right. Control Z if I want to undo something. If I make a mistake, it's hold down Control and then just press the letter Z. I'm going to kind of get rid of the sloppiness around the edges over here. And I can't get in there, so I'm going to just make a smaller brush. And I'm going to come in and just clean that up. Okay, so I painted glove number 1. I'm going to go over here and paint glove number 2. I'm going to switch over to my paintbrush, paint my second glove. Again, I'll try to stay in the lines, but if I go outside of the lines, that's why I'm going to switch to my eraser and I can zoom in and kind of fix that. Again, this is too small right now, so I'm going to make this just a little bigger. And I'll use my eraser to kind of clean up the edges of what I just painted. All right, a little bit over there. Looks like I missed a spot, so I'm going to switch back to my paintbrush. I'll make it a little bit smaller, and then I'll just fill in right over here. Okay, so what I've done right now is I've painted my gloves. I'm going to come over to my layers window. I'm going to create a new layer right down here. I'm going to go to that layer. I'm going to call that layer, in this case, I'll call it skin. So this will be my skin tone layer. I'll go skin, okay. I'll go over here on skin while it's selected. I'm going to change normal to multiply, okay. And I'll go to my color picker and I will look for skin. If I go down towards the orange and the red here, you're going to see you have a lot of options. I am pretty pasty and pale, so I'm going to go up over here and just hit OK. I'm going to grab my paintbrush. Again, what I want you to think is I want you to be on a different layer, create a new layer for every color. I'm going to start kind of painting in my skin color. All right. Now, why do I want this to be on a different layer every time? Well, I'll just show you really quick. Let's just decide a week from now I want to change the color of my outfit over here. Like I don't like the green, I want to go to the blue. Well, I can go to the scrubs layer, I can click on it, and then using image adjustments, hue and saturation, and see that I can change the color of my shirt. Now, if I put all that stuff on the same layer, all the colors would be changing and I'd have no control over it. So my skin color would change, my gloves would change, everything else would change. But since I put it on its own layer, I have the ability to kind of adjust the color that I want, the lightness, the saturation, everything else like that of my uniform. So by putting each different piece on a different layer, it allows me the chance to then go in there and be able to adjust it later on. I'll go over some of that stuff later once we're completely colored. All right, but for now, what I really want you to do is, if you're okay with the process, if you understand how to use layers, the brushes, the erasers, you can start coloring your character. Each new color should be on its own layer. I like to name the layers so I know which one's which. So later on, if I want to come to scrubs, or I want to change, I get a tan and I want to change my skin color, or if I want to change the color of my gloves, I have the ability to mess around with that. When you're done with this and you're done coloring, remember, you're going to save this as a PSD. Save as a PSD. All right? It's going to create another copy in your downloads. What I would tell you is, later on, you probably want to erase the older copies, but it's good to have it there because then you can always, if you screwed up, you have another copy of it. When you're done with this, you're going to want to take a screenshot again with the snipping tool. When you take your screenshot of the entire program. Some of you have cut off just to this. They're showing me the toolbar and your painting. That's not enough. I want to see your layer window so that I can see you're doing it correctly, so that all these layers that you've created and the fact that they're switched to multiply are all there in the picture for me. You can see on my picture, it's not just my drawing. In fact, truthfully, for me, it's more important that I see this part rather than the entire thing. So make sure when you take a screenshot of this, you're taking it the whole program so I can see this part of the program. Now, for those of you who are okay, you can go right ahead and start coloring. All right, I'm going to stop this video.